Welcome back. We are here with Dancing Dan Watt, and you don't have a problem with me calling you Dancing Dan. That's what your website is, right?
Exactly.
Dancing Dan Productions.
Exactly.
So
and there was, you,
yes.
you know who named me that?
Who?
B. Arthur.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
How much do I love B.
Exactly.
Arthur?
Yes.
I love B. Arthur immensely. We were just talking about that right now. I'm doing a one-woman show, but years ago, somebody, when I was thinner, because I couldn't do it this way, but somebody was like, "Oh, Shannon," because I have a very deep voice, and they were like, "You should do a one-woman show and do B. Arthur."
Yeah.
I love her to death, but I'd have to get slimmed down and stretched a little bit. I'm tall, but I'm not that tall. She's amazing. So she named you Dancin Dan. What was that circumstance?
Yeah. She did a fundraiser for me, and I then became her personal assistant.
Wow.
After the show, she said, "You're more organized than most of the people I worked with in New York."
Yeah.
But she has a son named Dan, and she had someone on her team named Dan. So she said she had to keep it organized.
Right.
So I was Dancin Dan.
Well,
yeah, so that
look, if you're going to be named by somebody, B. Arthur is pretty...
From one of the best, what can you do?
Yeah, that's like being knighted,
Exactly.
I think is what that is, so that's cool. Well, that brings me to, you had mentioned before that you're a dancer and that you're producing this film, Ballet for All Kids, a documentary, and we want to encourage people to donate on dancingdanproductions.com. But how did you get to this spot? What's the Dancin Dan story?
Well, I was started out as a dancer studying in Cleveland and in New York, and then I moved out here to, follow the dream.
Yes.
And I got in a dance company called On Our Toes. It was a touring company through the Music Center downtown. And it was also, it was one of their educational shows, so we would go to schools and all that kind of stuff and have workshops afterwards. So I was always around kids. And then I was on stage once, and I helped with the lighting cues before the show opened. And they brought up like the green lights and they were supposed to be blue. So I'm dancing and I'm like, they're in the wrong cue. And I kept dancing, but I thought, oh my gosh, I had crossed over to being a producer because I was performing, but I was more
Your
concerned.
head was thinking about that. Yeah.
So that was where the journey started. And then I thought, I can't perform anymore because it's no longer, my passion has switched to the other side.
Right.
So that was the first thing, and then I started teaching at the South Bay Conservatory, and I put together their dance program and then the musical theater program for them, and I did a summer camp, created this musical theater 3-week summer camp, and that's where I taught jazz 1 through 5, and then had a company, but I always wanted to work in film and television. So I then took the leap. I thought, well, I either do it or don't. And I sent out my resumes to a few places, and Columbia Pictures hired me.
Lovely.
And I was like, huh? But they were like, they said, well, you're so organized. You produce theater. You have your schedule. You hire. You audition. You do everything. We're just going to take it and put it over here. Do you want to try it? I was like, okay. So I started out as an assistant in the development department and worked there for 5 years. And then Simon Cowell opened a scripted TV and movie department here in LA. And I went to work with him, and he is an amazing man, everybody, let me tell you. He is such a giving, he is truly amazing. And while I was there, I worked on the movie This Is Us, which is the One Direction documentary.
Yes.
And there I met Morgan Spurlock, who is my idol now.
Right.
And is a mentor and a friend.
Quite the documentarian, I guess is the word,
Yeah, he did.
right?
Super Size Me was the one that most know, where he ate
but several more that he's done now. But you started to say the fast food thing. We changed the way we all looked at fast food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I worked with him on that movie, and he was just always so positive and upbeat, and and inspirational.
Yeah.
And when I went home, all I would watch is his show on CNN or Lisa Ling or the History Channel. And I thought, I'm putting my energy in these scripted movies, which are great.
Right.
but all I watch is this.
Right.
I love the human story. I love
Yeah.
following people, and I love talking about how they got where they were, or what they're doing now. So I texted him and I said, "Do you have time to talk?" I said, I think I want to make the jump and do a documentary.
There you go.
And he was actually, this is how great he is. He was actually at Sundance, going from one movie to the other. He had 15 minutes, and he called me on that walk from one studio to the other.
That's awesome.
And he said, "Okay, you're going to do it." He said, "I'm here for you."
That's awesome.
And he goes, make sure your first one or two are something that you can answer any question about. It's got to be
Right.
your passion. Build your foundation. And he said, "I guess you're a producer." And that was it. I was like,
Yes.
"Oh, I guess I am." I mean,
Amazing.
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then like I said, then I did the research of what I wanted to do, and
Yes.
and it led me to the school, Ballet for All Kids.
And I love the fact that I always say something's poking you.
Yeah.
When something pokes you creatively and you can't get away from it, you got to turn around and face it down, right?
Right.
And those two girls in your dream were poking you and saying, "It's time. Somebody has to tell our stories, and to you, you need to tell our stories through these other kids."
Right.
But I think that that's amazing, and I recently I met you at AutFest. Where we were watching a wide variety of films that have to do with autism. And you want to talk about an immersive weekend of watching films and seeing all the different ways that a story can contain autism and inform the world.
Right.
And watching the audience reactions. And I have to say that the big film for me this year that happened to win for Best Documentary at AutFest, but it had already won for as far as I was concerned, because I watched it and that's all I could talk about for 2 weeks was Dina. And if you haven't seen Dina, oh my goodness. It is I went to friends who don't know anything about autism and said, "You need to watch this film. It is so entertaining, and it is so human, and it is so powerful to see this woman's story." So I love that you're doing a documentary about dance, because we need to see that. We need to see that. And I think who better than you to do this, because you are the anointed, you've been tapped, you were poked.
And I also think what it will make this different is because I was a dancer.
Yes.
So it's when we're filming, I have a different perspective and a different eye. I have the cameraman there and the crew, and I'm like, do me a favor, why don't you lay on the floor and let them dance over you? And he's like, "What?" I go, "Trust me." I'm like, "Just let them jump over you." And he's like, "Okay," and he lays down. Or and I said, "We'll get their feet, because we'll see, like any dancer, you have your turnout and you're working and you're working." I said, "So why not document one of the girls' feet as she gets better and better?" So it was, and he was like, "I never thought of that." I'm like, "I know, that's why I'm here."
Because you're Dancin Dan, and that's why you're the person who has to make this movie. I just love it. So again, we want to say the website is Dancin Dan. So is it dancing with a G or just Dancin?
No G,
okay,
Dancin.
then we need to Dancin
Dan Productions.com.
Fabulous. I can't wait until you're premiering. You have to make sure that we know about that.
Oh,
We'll
of
cover
course,
it.
of course.
Fabulous.